everyone, and welcome to Strong Conversations Hot Takes from a Cultural Firebrand. I am your host, Dr. Carolyn Strong, said Cultural Firebrand. So, if you are new here, we talk all things equity, anti racism, privilege, all the stuff y'all don't want to talk about. That's your girl. So, with that being said, y'all know I like to keep it brief. So, I am going to bring on our special guest today for our conversation around unpacking privilege. I know, the P word, I know, but it's what we're doing today. So, I have the pleasure, and when I decided to do this show, I couldn't think of a better person to bring on to talk about it. So, today, you all are going to have the pleasure of being in conversation with me with Dr. Eddie Moore. Dr. Eddie Moore has founded the Privilege Institute. He is also the founder and program director for the Global White Privilege Conference, which we are going to spend some time talking about. But I will let him unpack his bio a little more for you. You all know, I believe people are the you experts. So with that being said, I am going to welcome Dr. Moore into the room. Hello, sir. Hold on, I think you're muted. There you go. Welcome, sir.
All
How
right.
are you?
Yes, I got it. Hey, you can hear me okay, Doc?
I can.
Yeah,
Welcome.
you see me okay? I'm good. I'm shining.
You are shining like
All
the
right.
diamond you are.
I appreciate that. Listen, I'm so appreciative of this opportunity. It's always good to see you, and I just want to, in front of your audience, just say thank you because since I've been running the White Privilege Conference, 1999 when it got started, not everybody has been open with their invitation, open with their embrace when it comes to a black man introducing, running a conference called the White Privilege Conference. And you, from the beginning, sis, have been down like four flat tires. So, in front of your audience, I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate that. I really do.
Thank
So,
you.
I'm
I
honored.
appreciate you.
I'm honored again to be on the show. I'm appreciative for the opportunity. What's up, everybody? I am Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. I am the founder, program director of the White Privilege Conference. I also have my own consulting work that I do called America and More that really takes me around the nation, around the world, talking about topics like privilege as well as diversity, equity, inclusion, and all the things involved in that in a nutshell. But I'm a Florida boy. That's where I was born and raised. I grew up in a little town just outside of Tampa, Fort Myers, down on that West Coast. And my high school basketball coach was from Iowa. I had three older brothers, Doc, that were getting in some trouble. So my mom, she, and my coach collaborated to get me as far away from home as possible. So I spent all of my education actually in the Midwest,
I
Iowa.
was wondering how you got over here in Iowa and West.
Yes,
Thank you, because that was going to be
yes.
one of my questions.
Yeah, so in the Midwest in general, but specifically in Iowa, I went to a little small college called Cornell College, which is actually a unique college because they operate by what they call one course at a time. In a nutshell, it's like the
Oh,
J term. Yeah, so a lot of people are familiar with the J term where they give you those short classes during the break, maybe 3 weeks,
oh,
four
okay.
weeks. Well, Cornell's entire curriculum was this J term where you had one class, 3.5 weeks, you get a 4 day break and then you go into the next class. And that was perfect for me, Doc, because I actually played football, baseball, and basketball for 4 years in college. So
So
I
you
was a
played
kind of
all the sports balls.
all ball, all the time, which was really important because one of the things I was struggling with when I went to college was drug and alcohol use. And
Okay.
so by the time I graduated, I was still struggling. But the reason I think partly why I made it, not only the good people there at Cornell, but I was rigorous in my training and my sports participation. So I couldn't party all the time. But listen, when I graduated college after 4 years, I got to just give a shout out to the mighty because something helped me through those days, sis. I
All
don't
the
know what it
time.
was. Woo! But anyway, I got through. I went back home. I got with the same people my mama tried to get me away from. In 2 years, sis, I was a full-fledged crack addict.
Why do we do that? Why
Two
do we
years.
do that?
2 years, sis. Listen, I was got in trouble. I was a functioning crack addict. I was,
Hmm.
college educated, all that kind of stuff. You could never tell if you saw me on the street, right? I got in trouble at my job. really trying to fuel my crack habit by taking money from my workplace. And the two women there that caught me gave me a chance to get sober. And so that was 30 something years ago. I got myself back together. I came back to Iowa to another small college called Loris College, got my master's degree, met a professor there that introduced me to the PhD path. I went to the University of Iowa, got my PhD, and that was really the launch of me just really, you know, propelling myself to want to do something that gave back. People really helped me along my way, and I wanted to make sure I gave back. And so I went on to get my PhD. My PhD research was on Black football players. So I was really focused on trying to contribute around Black males and education. And so I was really grinding towards the Professor Soriot path. And I took a job back at Cornell College, the same college that I went to college. And long story short, sis, in all of that work that I've been doing and the research I've been doing and the people I was meeting, this concept of white privilege was continuously coming up. And I was in the circuit of conferences and research conferences and presenting my work and trying to introduce my research. And I wasn't always, again, receiving a real open kind of welcome to having this
I wonder
kind of this.
why.
Now, I mean, you even said it to your audience. That's right. We're talking about the P word today, right? Like,
Mhm.
just imagine in 1999, here I am saying, hey, we got to talk about white privilege, right? So let's just say it was a pushback that some people are just starting to feel today. But back in 1999, I was getting this pushback around the conference. But that was one of the first. I took a job at Cornell College as the director of diversity, multicultural programs is what it was called at that time. This is in
Mhm.
1999, sis. The first, one of the first programs I put together was the White Privilege Conference. And so we had the White Privilege Conference in 2000. We're now getting ready in 2024 to have the 25th annual White Privilege Conference. But that's been one of the things I've been most known for is running the White Privilege Conference. But that path, that journey, I just wanted to give a little bit of that,
Yeah.
particularly this battle, this really overcoming addiction and working through that addiction and getting myself to the highest level academically that I could. It's just important that I I let your audience know that I'm divinely inspired. Okay, I didn't grow up saying, "Hey, someday I'm going to be the white privilege guy." No, this is something that something greater than me played a role in putting me on this path. Cause sis, I can share some of those journeys, those stories
Man,
from those crack days, and you wouldn't believe your big brother was out there like that. But sis, I was out there.
man, I you came with a testimony that I wasn't even expecting today.
Ooh,
And you know, when you are moved to tell your story, it's my job to step back and provide the platform for that to happen because I promise you, you're going to help somebody with that today.
yeah,
Like,
I
I
really appreciate
promise
that.
you, you're going to help somebody with that
I
today.
appreciate that. And that's what I want to say to folks. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I'm not done yet. But the thing, again, I want to reiterate to the audience is when you hear the White Privilege Conference, just know it's a black mind. It's founded by a black person, ran by a black person, unapologetically black. But that idea, that's a black idea, is divinely inspired. So no matter what weapon, no matter what hurdle they put before me, there's just nothing I don't feel I can't overcome. Uh,
Absolutely.
listen, loving, and learning. That's my platform. And so at the White Privilege Conference for 25 years, coming into our 25th year, we're not attacking white people. We're not trying to destroy people, beating up on people. I'm really trying to say we need a space for those of you out there who feel like, hey, I want to talk about something tougher than diversity. I
Right.
want to do a little more I want to have a little more difficulty in my, a little more rigor in my learning around these topics. There is a space for you. That was the goal, was creating that
Absolutely.
kind of curriculum space,
Right.
that community space where we could talk about tough stuff.
And
Last
that's and
thing,
that's what drew me to it. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of what drew me to it. But before we
Last thing I
continue,
want to say.
mhm,
Last thing I want to say, sister. Then I want to turn it to you. That is just as critical now, because you know this as well as I do. In the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of people coming into the diversity work who ain't done the work. So one of the other important pieces and reasons for the space of the white privilege conference for is for those people who say they're down with diversity to put in some work around diversity. Because you got to be. I often wonder. Do you have to? You often wonder, like, where does my yoga teacher go to yoga? Like, who pushes the coach? Who
yeah,
pushes the consultant? That's one of
yeah.
the things we also want to have in that conference space. Is you don't just get to come to share your work at the White Privilege Conference. You got to do your work there too. So I wanted to add that piece as well.
Well, I appreciate that. The only reason I want to interject, because the conversation is conversation and I love it, but we've used the word privilege a great amount of times. And for me, the teacher in me is saying we can't keep throwing this word around without defining it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
first things first, before we continue, what are we talking about when we say privilege? I want you
Yeah.
to define it for our audience so we're all on the same page moving forward.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear about this because I'm from the neighborhood, so I can't be using all these academic terms that ain't nobody in my neighborhood gonna be receiving. So I want to
Have
be
you met
clear. That's what I'm saying, fam. I'm not talking to just those of you. We're not just inviting for people who are in these, spaces and places that sometimes has us thinking in these kind of higher levels. The privilege definition we use is simple, right? Like what you have access to, you didn't earn, right? It's something that's just bestowed upon you. And so you actually have received it so much, you don't even think about it. That's the basic idea, the basic concept of privilege. The actual thing that you have, you did nothing to get it, and you've received it for so long. I mean, it's almost automatic. You don't even think about it. I think about this program right now, right? Like I come on here and I'm not even thinking about, oh, what if somebody can't hear? Should I have an interpreter? Should I have closed captioning? Right? Like I have so much ability privilege. I've been receiving it for so long, sis. I mean, sometimes I don't even think about it. I just assume, oh, it's gonna be okay. Right? So when we talk about privilege, not only are we clear in that simple definition, we're also comprehensive. It's not just white privilege, although that's the number one privilege here in America, especially. Okay, this is a nation designed by a small group of people for a small group of people. And now, hopefully, we're working to broaden that. But for a long time, there were some of us that had no access to some of the opportunities that America offers today. And
now,
so
bruh,
that's
can
why
I?
white privilege is that important piece from the beginning. But privilege happens across race, religion, economics, ability, gender, gender identity. In the White Privilege Conference, it's a space and place where we're covering it comprehensively.
Now, can I add to your definition, bruh? Because
Please,
I
Sam.
totally agree with what you have, you didn't earn, but I want to layer that a little bit because there's a little nuance there. Because even when you did earn something, you need to acknowledge that it may open some doors for you. Because I'm not going to sit here and say that I didn't earn my PhD or you didn't earn yours, but Dr. Moore and Dr. Strong open up doors that Carolyn and Eddie cannot.
Oh, I tell you what, received. I got nothing I can say to that. I just say I receive it. As my good friend Dr. John always says, I receive that because you're absolutely right. That titles matter. In some
They
cases,
shouldn't.
body image matters. Skin color matters. Like that is absolutely right in reference to that addition that you put on that and that definition, and I receive it.
So we now that we know that privilege can come in many packages. We fully recognize all of that, and I think that that's where a lot of people get caught up because when you start talking about privilege, there's that lot out there, if you will, that are always very much. I don't have any privilege. I earned everything I have. And I love the fact that WPC addresses that, and they address it unapologetically and authentically and across the board. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about the conference. But the question I want to ask you is that, given your experience with this, because you've been doing this a long time, why do you think privilege is now considered an insult instead of what it truly is? Just an acknowledgement of what you have, like you said, what stuff, your doors are opening for whatever reason. There is privilege in that, but people don't want to acknowledge that. Everybody wants to operate in this silo, and I did it all by myself. No, you didn't, and that's okay. But why do you think it's such a dirty word? Even though you've been out here educating the people for 2+ decades.
Yeah, I think sometimes when I think about that, it's partly due to the way that people have, unfortunately, entered or participated in these conversations. So when people hear privilege, they think villain, that I'm a bad person. And so I think that some of that may come from maybe just the way they've been historically thinking about it, so to speak. But a lot of times I've seen some conversations where people have been trying to have some difficult or courageous, or dare I say strong conversations, and the philosophy they've been using is attacking and degrading, and therefore that person that we're having that conversation feels bad. So I think that over time, when you say privilege, that people they possibly may want to be willing to even acknowledge some of that, but it's a bad feeling. So what we're constantly and consciously trying to do at the White Privilege Conference is not say having privilege makes you a bad person. What we're saying, if you understand privilege, like, you can do some good stuff with it. So it doesn't make you always bad unless you're doing some bad stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. We know some folks out there who are taking or receiving some of these advantages, these unearned advantages or privileges, and doing some horrible things with them. What we're saying is having privilege doesn't make you a bad person. In fact, we want to assist you in understanding how privilege works, how power, privilege, leadership, and combination works, and then having you do some good things with that. Open some doors, give some opportunities, allow for some chances, providing some support, right? Not handouts, but encouragement, empowerment. And that's what power and privilege allows people to be in the position to do. So it's that villainization, sis. I think that's what's got people kind of a little uneasy when they hear privilege today, in my experience.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of where certain velvet glove approaches work a little bit better, because being in this work and having to do this work, and this, and having to kind of weave in and out of these spaces, you have to kind of know how to broach things with people. Now, if you're coming in with an iron fist, no one's going to hear you. And that's I think that, and you probably can tell this from the outside better than I can. I think that I'm kind of getting my velvet glove together, because I'm able to have some of these conversations with people that aren't necessarily easy to have. But that brings me to my next question. So the Privilege Institute, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but how did you say, okay, this is no longer a moment, because this is how it feels to me and how it looks to me. This is no longer just a moment in time, but TPI is a movement that needs to be here in perpetuity. So how do we get from, I'm going to do this workshop, I'm going to explain this to the people, to the Privilege Institute?
Yeah, it's divine, sis. I mean, I like to think that it was Eddie Moore Jr. who said, I'm going to make this happen. But it's all the things that happen in our world that, just kind of happen at the right time, happen when you're struggling, when you're not sure, when you're facing some challenges, and then the doors just open. I mean, there's been just some things, some light posts along my path that just kind of went off right at the right time. And so the early days of the conference, I was just really literally trying to get people to come, trying to just say to people, you got to come to this conference. You got to be participating in these conversations. And we began to, after 4, 5, 6 years, build up a good little following. And then I took another job, and then we started to move the conference around the nation. And then we entered into a partnership with a university for a good 6, 7, 8 years, I think, University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. And then we parted from them. And it was at that time and that timing of that time that really allowed us to say, hey, well, maybe we don't need a partnership. Maybe we can, really isolate or really operate on our own and not have to really go through any checks and balances of a university in reference to making decisions. And it was so timely, but it was a
Mm.
combination of the people that I had met that have been a part of that also were really instrumental in reference to supporting that move. And so once we did that, we were able to form our own journal. We were able to form our own 501c3 status. And so that freedom, I like to call it that Harriet
Let's put a pin
Tubman,
in that because I didn't
that
know you
Harriet
had a
Tubman,
501c3. Where do folks donate?
that you can go online to the White Privilege Conference, the Privilege Institute. I'm sorry, the 501c3 is the Privilege Institute. Our number one program is the White Privilege Conference, but we also have some other programs. But it's there on that website, the Privilege Institute, a 501c3. And you can get your tax deductible credits for that as well. That's where you give if you want to give. And we're asking people this year to give in increments of 25. You can give 25 cents. You can give $25. You can give $250, so on and so forth. So that's where you do that. But it was forming that 501c3 that really gave us that freedom, that Harriet Tubman framework that we could then do not only what we wanted to do, but be even more creative because we didn't have those institutional boundaries. And that's the way we've been operating since 2015, 16.
Okay. So since we're talking about the conference now, it's your number one programming for the year. And I will be in Tulsa this year. I will, well, you knew that already. I'll be there. What is it that, no, let me back up because I've seen it. It's big. It's got a lot of moving parts to put that thing together. How were you able to navigate all the pushback that I know you got? I know it. I don't even have to ask you about it. I already know. How were you able to navigate that and put something together on the scale that the WPC operates? It's not 2 conference rooms at the local hotel, which is nothing wrong with that because we all got to start somewhere. But it's not that anymore. I will say that because I'm sure when it started, it was. But it's much bigger than that now. And there's so many people there. And, when I'm there, I kind of walk around and talk to people and everybody is having an amazing time. So with that being said, how do we get there?
Yeah. It's really been the people. It's been a family. It's been a community effort. I mean, over these 25 years, it's been a struggle. I face, again, as you mentioned, some real resistance to some of the highest level of some extremists and white supremacists posting things and posting my picture in places, sending emails or sending mail directly to the organization. I mean, there's been some real ugly stuff over the years. But I learned early on, number one, you got to be prepared for everything, surprised by nothing. So there are some, security measures that we have in place when it comes to dealing with some of those folks, whether they're from the post kind of framework or if they're trying to get there face to face. So we've had to deal with some of that and have some measures put in place. But also, I'm not afraid. Listen, I'm living a divine life. I'm not walking in fear of white supremacy. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. So I feel like there's enough people scared out there, sticking to the boundaries so they stay safe, so they don't have to take any risks and put any life and limb on the line. And I'm not mad at you. I'm not judging. I'm not degrading. I'm just saying, in every aspect of our country's history, at every point in their history, there are some folks putting it on the line. I want to be in that category. That's where I want to be. And so I want to be really smart and secure and comprehensive in how the things around me are attentive to some of those folks. Because there's some folks out there who are unhealthy when it comes to hate. We've seen this. But also, I want to be absolutely clear to any white supremacists listening. I ain't scared. I'm coming 100 because my mission vision is divinely inspired.
Well, I appreciate that. And I will say this, those of us on the front lines doing this work already know what a scary place your DMs can be. Because given the topics that I speak on, given the things, there have been some safety concerns. And again, I don't have to tell you that. Like, I can open my DMs at any point in time, and I'm a race baiter, and I'm this and I'm that. And when you are walking in your purpose, you kind of recognize that that comes with the territory, and you have to believe that if this is truly what's meant for you, then that divine protection will in fact be there for you.
Yeah, that's so good, sis. I learned this long ago. I think it was the brother Dr. Lee Jones. I mean, there's been so many good people along my path. But in the world of business, I mean, there are ways that they have signs of success. In the world of science and technology, all of these fields, we all differently have signs of success. In education, sometimes it's a little harder just because our kids, our students, our ex, folks who've come through our path sometimes don't come back until 10 years later and say, Dr. Strong, you saved my life. So there's
Yeah.
something special about education. But this work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, of justice, now, this is really important here, right? Sometimes the only way we know we doing good things is we pissing people off. So, I'm okay sometimes knowing that mail I receive, that email I receive, is actually a recognition that, all right,
Or
if
as
I
my
got
mama
the
used to
Klan,
say,
if
oh, I
I got
made you uncomfortable.
bam, if I got the Klan mad at me, I'm happy because I'm doing my job.
Oh yeah,
And
we
I'm
yeah.
pretty damn good at my job, sis. And I think that's something for us to remember at that high level of pursuing justice. Sometimes the way that we know that there's been success is some of those extremists, those white supremacist ideologies and belief patterns, they're going to be responding. And that says to you, job well done, Dr. Strong. That's the
Yeah,
way to get them. So that's how
absolutely.
I'm looking at it as well. Being
and
safe,
and
though.
that's kind of how you have to look at it.
That's right.
Otherwise, you wouldn't there would be no reason to continue, because if I'm not being effective, then what am I doing? But speaking of effectiveness, I did want to ask, what do you feel? And I have my own answer to this, but I want to know yours because you've been in the field longer than I have, and you are one of the people that I look up to in this field. If I hadn't told you that, I believe in giving people their flowers. So what is the most effective approach in getting specifically white men to understand their privilege? Because that's a hard one. Because when you're at what I guess the top of the food chain, you don't
Yeah.
really see a lot of times what's happening around you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the a couple of different things that come up. Number one, though, that it's always important to remember there are some pancakes you'll never flip over. Okay. So too often people spend most their energy on the most resistance. And when you do that, by the time somebody who's ready to learn comes along, you're exhausted. So let's be really careful and strategic over these next 10 years that we don't give our energy to the most resistant. Now, strategy wise, when I see somebody ready to go, ready to grow, I'm trying to be really assessing what level they're at. Because if they're at 101, I want to be able to start there, meet them where they are, but be clear we don't stay at 101 in any subject matter. So why are we doing that in diversity? We got to move along the continuum, offer some assessment, evaluate some ways to get an understanding of where they are, why they're where they are, and some developmental content to move them along, assess them again, make sure that they're actually progressing, hold them accountable, and then providing them some coaching and some support. And then when you set them free, give them a module, a framework that they can keep practicing, keep growing. And for me, that's the 21-day challenge, which is really designed to give people one thing a day towards justice that's manageable, that just keeps them going and keeps them growing.
And I think that that's really the key is like, we're not coming into this work going, hey, tomorrow you will be bias free and anti-racist and all these other things. Like those things are not going to happen. So we're it's just like any other educational endeavor, right? We're meeting people where they are, like they said, and then we're moving them along at the increments that they are able and willing to receive this information. Because for this work, one of the things that we have to keep up front is that it's not just about receiving the information. It's about receiving the information, processing the information, coming up with a plan to integrate that information into your thinking and ways of being moving forward, and then actually doing it.
Yeah.
So it's a multi-layered process, which is why those of us in the field keep saying you can't do anti-racism. You just have to be anti-racist, because it flows into everything that you do. It is a part of your being. It has to be. You can't, because you can't pick and choose when somebody else's rights matter.
Yeah, that's so good, Doc. In fact, what I've done and putting a little twist on that being is actually saying becoming. Because the way I understand Kendi's work is it's not a finish line you cross anti-racist. It's a mindset that you adopt. And so that's why I say going and growing. And really what I'm saying to people today, I feel like there's almost like three categories. I mean, like I said, there's just some outright nasty people out there. I mean, it's just going to be those people on those extremes that are just going to be resistant no matter what you say, no matter what facts you offer them, no matter how much love you show them. They just stay in that space. I still think there's some neutral folks who are still kind of floundering, not quite sure. And then there are those folks who are making that commitment. They're becoming. Now, again, most people think they're better off than they often are. Actually, some folks are in that third category when they've self-appointed themselves and they've done nothing to go and grow. So that's really where I'm at. Where I'm at right now is really saying to folks, if you're ready to move out of that neutral, you're ready, right? Don't go too quickly, just because it's hard. Becoming anti-racist, Kendi is clear. This is rigor. It's hard work. It's hard
And
work.
it's hard because it requires a level of personal reflection that most work doesn't involve. And that's honestly the hardest part, because it involves reflecting on everything that you've ever known. It involves reflecting on everything that you've ever been taught. And we as adults often have this happen. Like I will tell just a little thing for me. Like when I was little, I would see my mom, when she would open up a new soap wrapper, she wouldn't throw the wrapper in the garbage. She would throw it in the hamper. And it took me a while to realize, like, I was just doing it because that's what I saw her do. It wasn't until I became a little older that I realized the soap wrappers went into the hamper just because they still smell like soap. So you put it in a hamper to provide some scent for the dirty clothes hamper.
Mm.
Didn't realize that's why I was doing it. I was doing it because that's what I'd always seen.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how this racism and anti-racism, how these things work. Like, you're doing the things that you've seen, but once you start this journey toward anti-racism, now you actually have to think about why that rapper is going in the hamper and
That's
whether or
right.
not this is what you want to do.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, that piece you mentioned about self-reflection and the difficulty, the intention, the dedication that it really takes to, I know for myself, there's still things, even though I'm Dr. Diversity, I'm running around, I'm writing all this, I'm speaking all these. I mean, there's some areas in the diversity work where I feel like I'm a PhD. And then there's some areas where I still feel like I'm that 8-year-old kid that learned from his 8 older brothers some really ugly, nasty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so at times it's really hard for me to come to grips with that, with all these fancy accommodation and accolades after my name. But
Right.
that's where that real tough work comes in, that humble pie of saying, yeah, I've done some really great stuff, but there's still some work I have to do, and we all got work. That's the key. Everybody's got work to do. But I
Yeah.
argue this: cultural capital, cultural competence, like having some, whatever the definitions is, whatever they are that you're using, whatever it is you're using in your organization. The bottom line is we can't be thinking in 2024 like it's 1904
Yeah.
or even 1984 even. I mean,
I
the
was
work
gonna
is
say
changing.
2004, but I feel you.
Fam, that's it. Like it's that real commitment to evolution, to progress, to ongoing. I think that's the piece that's often the most difficult for folks because they get one workshop or one podcast or one book or one friend or one vacation. It's like, nah, fam. That's not the kind of challenges we're facing today. The work is a mindset shift, a skill set commitment. That's what I'm arguing. And what I'm excited about, I still think we got some pancakes that won't flip out there. No doubt. I'm not naive to
Absolutely.
think we're not going to face that, but I still feel good. I still feel faithful and passionate about the possibilities ahead. In fact, sis, I tell people I'm not optimistic. I'm not pessimistic. I created a new word. I like to say I'm pessimistic. And pessimistic means you're optimistic, but you're doing stuff. You got action associated with your mindset and your skill set.
That
So I hope
actionable optimism.
that's it. Pessimistic,
There you go.
where you're committed and you're positive about the future, but you're only able to do so because you're backing it up with action.
And that's the part that a lot of people miss. And the thing is, the thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I will give, my oldest is about to be 22, and my youngest is 8. Lord Jesus, pray for me. But one of the things that I will say regarding both of them, so I have a Gen Z child and a Generation Alpha child. And one of the things that I've noticed about both of them is that those two generations are going to keep us honest, because this whole notion that a lot of us have just kind of adopted the mindset of, well, that's just how this person is. They're not trying to hear that. They are not trying to hear that. And they are very adept and astute at holding us accountable in ways. And I will forever be grateful to them for that, because they are making it very uncomfortable for people to look away from a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, you mentioning your kids and just those different levels and different ages in which they exist, it's just so important as we look ahead. I think two things to that, sis. Number one, I mean, I'm saying to those of us who are out here doing the work, that have been doing the work, have been reading all of these books and going to all these conferences, right? Like our kids are watching us now. Like this is the time where they need examples of courage, of commitment, of action. And we've had enough generations of folks getting passed down assimilate, stay in line, don't rock the boat. Right now, I think there's a way that you could be committed to justice and still not be attacking, degrading, or unable to be in friendship and relationship with people. It's almost like you got to pick one. And
Mm,
secondly, I mean, I think our kids, I think, like you said, they're hungry. They're not accepting what was actually just the way that things always have been, or the way people have always been. They're saying, nah, I think we could do better. And that again just has me even more pessimistic for the next 10 to 25 years, but not being naive because the resistance has been busy, fam.
yes. But with that being said, too, I think to add to that, one of the things that I think they need to see from us as the generations before them is this acceptance of responsibility. Two parts: the acceptance of responsibility followed up with changed behavior.
Mm,
Even if you stumble along the way, you still need to follow things up with changed behavior. For example, again, this is a process. And in addition to giving trainings, I still go and sit because I don't know everything. And
that's
there's always a lot to be learned. One of the things that I learned in this newest certification is that we are trying to move away from the word stakeholders because of the etymology of that word. And during Manifest Destiny, when people were kind of moving west and bowling over Native Americans, they were literally putting stakes in the ground to claim land from the people that already lived there. And that's where that
mm,
term comes from.
mm,
So in certain circles, where we love the term, especially in education, we love the term stakeholder. It's in everything. And now, in an addition to, or in an attempt, I should say, to be more inclusive in our language, I am finding out that this is one of the terms we shouldn't be using. So now that I know that and I understand that, it is now my job to try and remove that from my lexicon as best that I can.
Oh, that's so good, Doc. That's so good. First of all, thank you for moving my needle here this morning, because I'm gonna go right at that and everything I'm doing from here from this time forward. So thank you for that. But it's also a perfect example of just how everybody's got work to do. We all got learning. Like I like what you're saying there, like that framework of growth, of mindset, skill set. I love that. I love that. And again, I'm just appreciative because I just received a nugget this morning, and I'm gonna put it in action.
Yeah, they're suggesting collaborators
Yeah,
or community members, words that are still inclusive to let
yeah,
people know that they are still a part of this community, but just not specifically stakeholder. And this is why. And I think that the thing that moved me about it is it's not just this whole you can't say that anymore, but this is why.
yeah, yeah. That's
Because
so
when you
good.
when you give people the reason, they're more apt to act on it. This is why this language is not okay.
Yeah, that's an informed decision. Informed decision. I like that. Again, I think it's almost like you can do a whole presentation on this very topic. In fact, I've designed this workshop called CPR Diversity, and it's really based on some of, as you've seen, I'm sure, incident after incident. It seems like every news cycle, there's somebody losing their job or their career because they've done something stupid, so to speak, in reference to the workplace or the school space or the coaching arena. And so I've been watching all this and said, well, maybe people need some newer skill sets. At least they need to understand some of the newer language, some of the new changes. I mean, it's almost like uh, uh, people are still operating on an Apple IIc database when it comes to diversity, equity, and
You
inclusion.
lost me when you said Apple, but I'm gonna assume that's old.
And what we need now is the MacBook Pro version. in reference to our knowledge. And so this stakeholder example is something I'm going to now add to my slide and recognize this, acknowledge this
I'll send
conversation.
you the research on it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because that's one thing CPR diversity is all about. Is here are the things that you need to know, and it could literally save your life. Well, job, career in some instances, but in some places, what we now know is racism. Dave Chappelle said this years ago, right, in one of his comedic skits. This racism is killing me inside. That this racism, this oppression is a health care crisis.
I
And
have a show
so
coming up on that with a psychologist and an MD. We're going to talk about it in February. We're going to talk about it in Black
I'm,
History Month,
I'm
about
so
how
glad
we
you're
are
doing
now
that.
seeing physical symptoms because of the racism. But I'm not going to keep you, because I know you got stuff to do, especially with the conference coming up. But I do
Yeah.
want to spend some time on the conference so you can let the people know how they can still sign up, because there's still room, right?
There's still room. Actually, we are in the early stages of opening the registration. It just opened about a month ago. So we got some room as we get ready for April 1st to the 3rd. We're going to be in a historic place for our historic year, as you mentioned earlier, Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, yeah, we're really excited about this year's conference, and really excited to be going to Tulsa, Oklahoma to celebrate our 25th year.
So April 1st through April 3rd in Tulsa, how do people sign up? They sign up. Is there a separate website, or do they go to the Privilege Institute website?
Yeah, all the information is there. You can Google White Privilege Conference, the Privilege Institute. All those things are linked and coordinated together. But yeah, once you go onto that page, it'll take you to the registration site. We like to feel like our conference is one of the more affordable conferences out there. We try to offer some group rates for folks as well. But also, my motto has been, I don't want money to stop you from attending the conference. So if you're still dealing with and struggling with some monetary concerns, we have a kind of barter and exchange program where we ask people to kind of help out at the conference, doing some just, for example, the workshop you go in, you just monitor the room for us, help the speaker out. So it's something you'd already be doing, or a place you've already would be in, and you just help us out so we can have a kind of relationship that allows people to give back, and in return, we'll reduce that registration for folks. So we'll work with you no matter who you are. Don't let money stop you from attending. The Privilege Institute, again, that's the website where you can log on, see all the keynotes that we have coming. We got an exciting lineup this year, as well as get all the details around registration, location, hotel, so on and so forth.
All right. Well, before we close out, tell the people how they can find you.
Yeah, my name is how you find me, EddieMooreJr.com. And so if you Google that or put that in anywhere, you can find me in that way. I'm on Insta, I'm on X, I'm on
So
Facebook.
all of these are right. Your Twitter, your Instagram, your LinkedIn.
Bam. So whoever's in the background, Charlie in the background is right on, point on.
Isn't she
Appreciate that.
awesome?
Oh, I tell you what, that's phenomenal right there. We often get the credit for the frontward facing. So I want to send a shout out to Charlie, but also to the people that I seriously want to just say, when I have a public opportunity, that this white privilege thing is not an Eddie Moore Jr. thing, that it has been a family affair. And sis, there have been folks like yourself from the beginning, from meeting me, saying, I want to support, I want to help. And I just want to again thank you for that, but also thank all the people over these 25 years that have been willing to support no matter what the consequence. I
Ain't nothing
appreciate it.
like a good team.
Nothing like it, sis.
Nothing
Nothing
like a
like it.
good team. There,
Nothing like
look,
it.
I'll be the first one to say, we need to hold each other up. Not, and that's the thing. Like, we love to say we need to hold each other accountable. Okay, great. But there are
Yeah.
also times where we just need to hold each other up, because
Facts.
nobody operates in a silo. So
Facts.
I thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I appreciate you. I'm always rock with the work that the Privilege Institute is doing. Always.
Yeah, I
And
appreciate
with
that.
that being said, I will close us out. You are watching Strong Conversations, Hot Takes from a Cultural Firebrand. You can subscribe at YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook. I am actually on Instagram and TikTok now at Strong Conversations. Imagine that. Imagine that, right? I get like a team. So with that being said, I appreciate you. I thank you for coming on the platform. And y'all go register for this conference. Have a good one, y'all. You've been listening to Strong Conversations, Hot Takes from a Cultural Firebrand. Make sure to like our Facebook page at Strong Conversations or follow us on Twitter at Dr. Carolyn Strong. Until next time, have a good one.